Welcome to the first episode of The David Douglas Show. In each episode, we'll do a deep dive into different food topics in the least serious way. Episode 1, The Michelin Guide, will explore how two French brothers started a food guide from a tire company, how they've grown the company, the exact way that their inspectors go to restaurants, decide where to eat, decide what gets a star, how your tax dollars may be funding the Michelin Guide's expansion, and of course, we will dive in to the chefs who give up most of their lives, their families, their friends, to pursue one thing, their unsatiable need to fulfill their praise kink and get that third Michelin star. Roll the intro. This is the David Douglas Show. Remember, when other podcasts have production flubs or things that aren't perfect, that's a reflection of their character. But when we on this show do something a little half-shobbled, it's endearing, it's cute, and it shows that we're figuring the things out. So let's not forget that. The Michelin Guide. When did it begin? 1900, the first edition came out. What else happened in 1900? Let's give ourselves some historical context. Open door policy, the Battle of Plotrand. U.S. population was 75 million. This is the only thing so far that I remotely can acknowledge as something that makes sense to me. 1900, two brothers, Andre and Edouard Michelin. They're running a tire company. The historical context you do need, no offense to all this lovely stuff, the Boxer Rebellion, God bless them, was that there was 3,000 cars in France. So any increase in tire sales, if you're starting at 3,000, if you get a couple more cars out there and you sell a couple more tires, you're probably feeling great about yourself. So these brothers, let's take a look at these gentlemen right here. I mean, these guys, I love the way they look here. I mean, look at these gentlemen. For the audio listeners, the only way I can describe these two fellas here are ancient entrepreneurs. You know, every old entrepreneur looks like if they weren't running a tire company, they have the three-piece wool suit on, they have the grizzled beard, the spectacles. Back when they weren't glasses, they were spectacles. If they weren't doing this tire company thing, if they weren't driving around France trying restaurants, they'd be looking for oil. They'd be on the frontier. But also imagine if they do come into your restaurant and you see those eyebrows asking for the reservation for two. You're immediately intimidated. You don't even know there's a 3-star system yet. There isn't, by the way. They didn't start like that. But you're already worried. You're already thinking someone's judging based on the slant of the eyebrows combined with the sheen of the spectacle. And I do think there should be a buddy cop about them. I do think John C. Reilly and Will Ferrell should go about telling this story, and there could be we could do the French stereotypes. The American audience will love that. And they'll just speak English the whole time. They won't talk about the French thing. All the other characters will have a French accent. Will Ferrell, John C. Reilly, no French accents. So they go about in 1900s, they go about making the guide, and they give it out for free, and they say this is where you should eat. And the idea is if they can get people, one of these 3,000 people who has a car, driving more, maybe more people will get cars, get tires, and maybe those people who have cars and tires, they'll be burning through them, and they'll be selling more of those tires. Now, in 1920, they decided, hey, no more giving this away for free. The story is they saw it at a workshop. They was used stacked, there was a couple stacks of them, and they were stacking equipment on it. And they were like, no, this is a paperweight. This is not what we want. We're French. We're two brothers. We're ancient entrepreneurs. And we need this to have a more premium feel. So they started charging. And by the way, guys, 1900, 1920, it was a hit. It was very successful in terms of how many people were interested in the thing. And the main reason is this wasn't a resource that was available. I mean, before people were driving around France, why do you need the resource in the first place, right? So you're pretty much stuck in your town 90% of the time. You've tried every restaurant. You know the good ones and you don't. You don't need a guide telling you what's what. But all of a sudden, people start driving around, and in correlation with that, a new need arrives, the guide. So in 1920, they do that. They don't have any more ads in it either. That was the other thing they were doing to make money before. When it was free, they're like, give me some ads. Same model we have these days. And they started also categorizing them into hotels and restaurants, which they still do to this day. The restaurants get the most attention. That's what we're going to be thinking about mostly today. But they were doing hotels. So they started categorizing all over France. And in 1926, they brought out the star system. Premium fine dining gets a star. 1931, the 3-star system appears. And to this day, it largely remains the same. Now, they've grown a lot from 1920, 1900, when the first edition was printed, to now. They're in 45 destinations, 25 countries. They just came to Texas. It was a big hubbubaloo, if that's a word. And they employ hundreds of inspectors. No one knows the exact details. They don't have to disclose that publicly. But you do the math. If you're getting to all these countries, there's hundreds of people trying these things. If you're recommending 80 restaurants, you tried a lot more than that. So this ranking system they came up with in 1931, what was it then, and then what is it now? These were tire men. They weren't oil baron, they were tire men. And so their brains were thinking, how far are we driving? How much are we getting these people to get in their cars, wear those tires out, and so we can sell more? So 1 star was considered great food, still is today. 2 was worth a detour. You're making your trip across France. You're on a straight line, 40 minutes that way. Man, we're already driving for 6 hours in a probably very uncomfortable. Probably the cars are doing this a lot back then. And I'm sorry if the audio, you can hear that, but we're bouncing around. So to make a detour back then, it wasn't as comfortable and casual. You were probably really ready to get out of there. Now, of course, the rest of your life maybe wasn't a thrill exactly either. But that was what it was. 2 stars was worth a detour, hour or 2 maybe. I don't actually know the exact times of a detour, and I have a hair in my eye, and it's 3 stars worth a trip just for itself. You're in Paris. They're in the southwest corner of France. There's a restaurant. Well, if it's got 3 stars, it's so good. You got to get in your 1930s vehicle and God, is that when they were still starting the cars with the pull engine like a lawnmower? I do kind of feel like that would be. I mean, it would be annoying when it didn't work, but how nice would that be when it was working, right? I mean, people say men aren't men anymore. It's because we don't have to start things up anymore. Imagine if every time you wanted to get the Michelin guide to the website, you had to pull a lever, pull a little. I mean, I'd feel. I'm one of the least masculine people I know, and I'd feel more masculine. So maybe we should bring that back. So that's the criteria they came up with, and it still stands to this day. 1 star, great food. 2 star, worth a detour. 3 stars, a trip in itself. Make your way out there. Now, later on, they've added on some other things that are important, specifically the gourmand distinction. Gourmand means great value. So it's good food, but also the price is right. And I always associated that with kind of the hawker stands in China. Like, that's what I'm thinking. Like, this is actually like really affordable food for the common man. When it came to Texas, not all of the gourmands were like $3 tacos or anything like that. So they really do mean good value. It can be more expensive, but they're still saying, hey, for what you're getting, it's a great deal. They also have Green Star now. Green Star means you are a sustainable place. This could be a couple things. You could be running your restaurant with hydroelectric, maybe. Maybe you're near a dam. Perhaps a small village of beavers have set up shop near your establishment. And they've kind of done some sort of parlay with you. Hey, stop doing wood-fired oven stuff. Stop burning wood. Give us the wood. We'll hydroelectric dam your restaurant. It could be that. A lot of times it's coinciding with sustainableness, though. So where are you getting the ingredients from? How are they sourced? And how sustainable is that? In Texas, there's a restaurant called Didue. They do a lot of wild game. In Texas, there's a lot of wild animal issues. We have too many wild animals. And so shooting a feral hog that's taking over land, that's too much. That's actually really sustainable practice if you're going to use that at a restaurant. So that's how gets you a green star. They also have recommended. Recommended just means above average. So you can be in the Michelin guide, not a gourmand, not a star, but you're still recommended. Hey, this is good food. So that's the rating system. We have 1 star, we have 1 star, we have 2 star, we have 3 star, we have Bib Gourmand, we have recommended, and then we have over here sustainable green star. Now, when they're deciding these stars, right, they're sending out these inspectors, which we'll talk about more later. These folks are incredible in terms of how much time they spend eating food, how much time they've already spent in the industry. Ridiculous. So they send out these inspectors, but what are they actually looking at to decide, hey, are they recommended, are they star, etc.? First one, quality of ingredients used. Any chef you talk to will say that. Mastery of the flavor and cooking technique, the personality of the chef in the cuisine, value for money, and consistency between visits and between dishes. Quality of the ingredients used, self-evident. The better the starting thing is, the better the dish is going to be. I mean, that is the most basic. Basically, anyone who gives you cooking advice will start with that. Mastery of flavor and cooking technique. Also, not hard to figure that one out. What are they doing to actually put this thing together? And when you get to the 3-star, guys, I mean, all the dishes are cooked like 14 different ways before they come to your plate. If you're getting a potato dish, that potato's been boiled, it's been smashed, it's been re-rolled, it's been put in a cylinder, it's gone to space, come back, and then gotten fried off. So they can really start delineating when it gets to the higher echelons of these stars, because there's just more technique involved. There's just way more complicated stuff happening. So they can really start looking at those details. Personality of the chef and his cuisine. I love this one. Because that is a lot of times, even if a place isn't a Michelin place, that is what you kind of remember a lot of times. You kind of want to hear the story of the guy who came from a place and then he took the French influences and then he combined it with his mother's recipes. And a lot of times that's what you're excited about. You're like, dude, give me that one. Let me have it. Let me at that particular dish. Value for money, which obviously that's a Bib Gourmand thing especially, but you'd think, well, what are you talking about? These 4-star, 3-star, 1-star, 4-star is not a thing, excuse me. All these starred places, they're usually not cheap, especially the 3 stars. We're talking $300 to $500 price fix menus. But honestly, if you talk to the chefs that are at these restaurants and the people that work there, their margins aren't huge. The amount of time, and when I say time, that means they're paying their staff. The amount of time that goes into some of these dishes, the cost of these ingredients. Now, sometimes they're just adding on expensive ingredients, but sometimes they're adding on expensive ingredients and the starting ingredient is already expensive to source. It's already the filet mignon of the Wagyu that's been massaged and told that they were self-sufficient for its whole life. What if that was how the Wagyu cows worked? What if they just had really good parent, the handlers were just really nice. Dude, looking good today, bro. Gets to the restaurant, $800 for a steak. But they are looking at the value for money. So they're saying, look, if you're going to spend $400, it better be worth $400. Because there's other places they go to, $400, not worth it. The quality isn't there. So even though all these places are expensive, they're still looking for value of money. And then lastly, consistency between visits and between dishes. And this is big because if they're willing to go star mode, as they call it. They don't call it that. But if they're going to like Super Mario it and light up and they're invincible for 15 seconds, go star mode, they have to actually come to a consensus. So a person has to try it, then 2 other inspectors need to come. So now we're doing multiple visits. And if there's not a consensus, they'll come back again. So at least 2 visits, possibly more. All the dishes need to be high quality. And every time they go, they need to be high quality. Now, these inspectors that are looking for the personality, the quality of the ingredients, etc., how are they ordering? Well, they're looking at what makes the restaurant unique, right? We talked about it before, the chef, the personality. But if this place is known for Peking duck, we're getting the Peking duck. Duh. Is it a good expression of the chefs? Is that, if the stuff they're ordering, is it a good expression of the chefs? I see those as like similar, very similar items right there. Represent the restaurant, good expression of the chef. There's probably some nuance there, but I'm not an expert. How authentic it is to this type of cuisine. So, hey, maybe they're known for the Peking duck, but everybody at this style of restaurant needs to have a good soup dumpling. So we're going to get that. We're going to see what we think of that one because, that's what the people are going to be expecting when they come in here. And I like that. That makes sense. That's kind of how I order food if I'm testing something out, if I'm seeing it's going to be good. Now, this is what they don't consider in the stars. The restaurant's decor, the table setting, ambiance, atmosphere, and service. And you might go, huh? Which is what I said, because I was like, service isn't, it's not part of the setup. According to them, it's not. According to their website, according to lots of things I read on their official website, they put that in a separate category. So when we're looking at the Michelin stars, they're just talking about the quality of food. And to be honest with you, that does make sense with what I saw in Texas because a couple of barbecue spots were given a Michelin star. They have great service, but it is a very different type of service, and it's a very different type of ambiance. So if they were just one-to-oneing that, where one place you get, one-to-one service, details, your water refilled as you don't even look at them refilling it, that sort of situation, and then a barbecue spot where you're kind of going along, getting a tray of food and sitting down with it, getting your own drink, then yeah, they would be ranked a little differently probably. But they reserve the restaurant's decor, table setting, ambiance, and service to the spoons and forks rating. Now, the Michelin Guide, they do have a lot of these different symbology things. They're kind of like hieroglyphic people, they're kind of, hey, let's do a symbol here instead of a word. Instead of saying they have good service, we're going to do a spoon and a fork. They get way crazier. We're about to look at those. I'll start pulling that up. But so they do that. They go, one spoon is quite comfortable. Ironically, one spoon is quite comfortable and 2 spoons is comfortable. I don't know what the deal with that is. Quite is somehow now less than without a quite. That kind of makes sense. 5 is luxury. So that's the scale. 5 is like, oh, nice, baby. But they're separate from the food. So you can have a place that's only recommended, right? Which is above average. Am I right? Yeah, above average. But 5 on the stars and spoons. So it's fancy. It's really nice. But it's the food's, the food's above average. And then vice versa, you can have places that, hey, 1 or 2 on the spoons and forks. But actually, hey, 1 or 2 star situation. Most, it is, I will say, you don't see a ton of the 3 stars and 1 spoon and fork. I don't know if that's ever happened. That's research I didn't do for this episode. But let's look at the rest of these symbols because I don't think about these most. I don't think most people think about these that much. But let's think about them. That's what this is all about here. Oh, look at that. Here's the Michelin stars. Now, this is from the Michelin website right here. And here's the spoons and forks here. Look at this. Very comfortable, quite comfortable, very comfortable. Top class. They also have that for hotels and accommodations. This is the other half we're not going to talk about very much. They go to these hotels And they do that, and they also do Michelin keys. So you can be a 1 or 2 or 3 star keyed situation. You got the Bib Gourmand, which is this little Michelin man right here. Little rolled up fatty. In 1997, the Bib Gourmand symbol, the image of the Michelin man licking his lips. This dude is a hound dog. He's like, give me the food. He's dying for it. He's like, come on. Jeez. Oh, drink symbols. See, this is the stuff you would only get if you were deep in the Michelin Guide. And you're not going to see a press release that goes, so-and-so is added to the notable wine list of the Michelin Guide. But if you pick up the booklets, which they still sell in some countries, like Japan, by the way, cool magazine culture apparently in Japan. I think whatever the same thing that makes them get really detailed about vinyl recordings also goes into their love for a magazine. So they still print them there. Notable wine list, interesting cocktail list, interesting beer list. Hey, shout out that. Oh, interesting view. Oh, this is comedy to me. But I mean, it does make sense. I mean, I'm not going to say, but there are some restaurants in Austin that are known for their restaurant views and maybe not much else. But I do like that. You're like, dude, I don't care about the food today. As long as it's above average recommended, give me a view. Especially if you're traveling, man. Hey, God bless. Terrace dining. I mean, that's self-explanatory. These aren't exactly confusing hieroglyphs here. Simple shop. I don't know why this is so funny. Simple shops that offer great food despite their casual environment. Okay. A humble space. All right. I see. This is where I'm like, I don't know how would that also go into spoons and forks? I'm not sure. Counter dining. I guess I kind of like that. Open kitchen concept. Okay, cool. Yeah, you get to see the chefs do their work. And then here we get into the Michelin Guide inspectors, which we're about to talk about. God bless them. So we were just to summarize where we're at right now. Michelin Guide, long time ago, started in France, and then it started growing. They started selling the copies, no more ads, expanding outside of France, getting the star system running. Throughout the years, they've added some more details. In the 90s, they added the Gourmand. A lot of these things are newer. And they now cover 45 destinations, which means they are sending people around the world. They're sending their inspectors around the world to eat at these restaurants and say, what do we think about it? And these people, it's a pretty interesting job because they have to have a lot of experience in the industry and they have to eat a lot of food. 300 meals a year is the average. They're not allowed to go by themselves until they have about 800 meals experience worth on them. Until then, they're kind of shadowed by a more experienced inspector. I mean, 300 meals a year. Now, you thinking, okay, that's like one a day, right? But we're not working 300 days a year. We're expected to have a couple of days off, right? So how many working days are in a year? 52 weeks times 5. I'm just going to do that 250. So now we're a little less. Is that the right? How many working days are there in the year? $260. Okay, so actually more. So they're doing like at least a meal a day. And these aren't small meals a lot of times. They got to try multiple items. And it does sound fun. And I'm sure it is in many ways. But I'm sure there's also days where you're like, you just got back from Thanksgiving. You're like, oh, you're like so bloated. You just absolutely loaded up on the mashed potatoes and stuffing. You did the full plate, the turkey plate with the everything, the cranberry, the kind of gross candied yams your aunt brought because you're being nice. Oh no, no, they're good. Oh my God. Oh, you brought them again. You know that aunt who brings the same thing every year and she thinks everybody loves it? because no one has the heart to tell her that they're eating it out of courtesy. And then the reputation, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point. She's so excited because she thinks everyone likes the yams that she shows up to Thanksgiving with an unbound enthusiasm. And you got to match that and go, oh, yeah, of course I'm going to eat the yams. She's like, are you excited for the yams, David? Aren't you excited this year for the yams? And you got to be, oh, yeah, of course. So you did that plate, and then you did the second plate, which is just the mac, the mashed potatoes, the stuffing. You're going carb loading. Let's not even get to the pies. 2 slice minimum I have on Thanksgiving. Otherwise, I feel like a coward. So you just came back from that. You're feeling much like the logo, quite Michelin Man. And by the way, it's the end of the year. You're probably already 250 meals in at this point. If you're getting 300 done in a year. So you're already feeling quite bloated. You've already been doing this for a while. And you got to roll up and you got to email your boss saying, get to it, drive XYZ hours, load up on this food. It's going to be 12 courses today. Oh, brother. By the 6th course, you're starting to regret it. You're starting to say, you know what? Next year is going to be the year I tell my aunt how I really feel about those yams. And you start building a hatred towards those yams. And as you bite the dish, you can't help but think about the yams. And you're trying to remain your Michelin integrity. And what's the dessert of this 12-courser? If it isn't yam-based. Oh! I'm hooting, I'm hollering, I'm causing a scene. This is why I'm not hired by Michelin. Not only a reason why I'm not hired by Michelin, there are so many other reasons I wouldn't be hired by Michelin. And we're going to get into all of those after a break. We do have to cut to our sponsors who make this show possible. But when we get back, we will be going into exactly why I could never survive as a Michelin inspector. This first episode of the David Douglas Show is brought to you by our sponsor, the first fry you eat coming through the drive-thru at a fast food establishment. We'd like to thank them for sponsoring this show. Guys, what I love about the first fast food fry that you get coming out of the drive-thru is it's hot, it's fresh, and you're fiending for sodium. You have already had a sip of the Diet Coke. They've handed you that already. And your body can only think about, give me hot oil and soda. And I do feel for the beautiful folks that have to give you those fries because they can see the desperation in your face. Please give me the fry. Please give me the fry. Come on. And you finally get it. And when there's nothing like it. Now that's a 3-star situation. Is the rest of the fries, as they get colder as you drive, are they as good? No. But that first fry, God bless. And thank them for sponsoring our show. To get 10% off, you can go through the drive-thru and go use our code. Please give me a fry. I'm dying for the fries, please. To get 10% off at any local fast food establishment, we'd like to thank the first fry coming out of a fast food drive-thru for sponsoring the show and making this all possible. Welcome back. Before the break, we had just started to get into the details of the Michelin Guide inspectors. 45 destinations means they have hundreds of these folks employed. Now, what do you got to do to become one of these inspectors? To be one of the people that gets to judge those 5 components of a restaurant's food and decide if they're going to be recommended, not recommended, get a star, perhaps move up a star? The first thing they ask for is that you have 10 years of experience in the hospitality industry. They say meaningful experience, by the way, which, can you imagine if you had 12 and they're like, 4 of these weren't meaningful? You'd be pissed, right? 8,000 folks apply every year. And they're looking for the best and the brightest. And we did talk about how it could be a challenging job, but hey, buckle up, because all of hospitality is extremely challenging. And probably if you've been working in hospitality and you're not an owner who's reaping the benefits of a potentially successful restaurant, probably after 10 years, you're ready for a change up. You're ready to go around and eat a bunch of food and say, this is my opinions. So they're looking for folks with 10 years of experience. And if they deem you a winner after the interview process, you then do 6 months of training. Obviously in tasting, you're going to be going through some wines, but you're also going to be learning specific cooking techniques. And you might be saying, hey, they got 10 years of experience. What cooking techniques do they not know? Depends where they were working. We just talked about how some of these higher end restaurants, they're quadruple frying, sous videing, centrifuge, infusion. These kind of details, you got to know, hey, is this a good version of that or is that not a good version of that if you're trying these restaurants? They're also looking at farming techniques. So they're saying, hey, where did the food actually get sourced from? Is this more or less impressive? Is this beef supposed to be higher quality because it has this specific distinction? Hey, the server's telling me it's XYZ beef. It really should be more like this. Is it impressive that they source these things, or is that really common that they've sourced these things? Is this a one-off? The restaurant has a one-to-one relationship with this incredible fisherman, and no one else has that because he's doing a spear diving technique. That's the kind of stuff they need to know if they're going to be impressed by a restaurant. After the 6 years, after the 6 months, they're doing the 2 years being shadowed, or about 800 meals with a more experienced inspector. Kind of annoying, probably after a year and a half in, I'd be like, also imagine if you didn't get along. Because you're supposed to be having fun. You're supposed to be having a great time at these restaurants. I mean, you're working. You're supposed to be judging. But at the end of the day, I mean, why did you join the Michelin inspectors? Because you wanted to eat a lot of really good food. And then Gerald is there, and he's jaded, and he's, actually, I don't know. And you're like, come on, man. Can we just have a good time? Why you got to be like this, man? So you're there with 2 years with a more experienced inspector. And then a huge part of your time as a Michelin inspector is the secrecy. The idea being, if we let people know who the Michelin inspectors are, they're just going to bring their A game for us. And when normal people come into the restaurant, they're not going to bring that A game that they brought these inspectors that they know can bring them praise, adulation, and business. And then our guide is going to be completely worthless. And it might seem extreme to try to have all this secrecy when I explain the lengths that they'll go to, but it does make sense. If you are the top food guide and 3 stars or 2 stars can really change a restaurant's trajectory, yeah, they would give you, A, they'd try to figure it out, and B, they'd give you the bee's knees when you came in. So this is what they do. They're only allowed to tell their immediate family that they're Michelin inspectors. Everyone else, they have to tell they are in consulting or come up with some other excuse. They give false names and numbers on reservations. This way you can't keep track of, hey, is this guy coming 3 times right around the time the guide's about to come out? And you're not allowed to say anything. And they've got all these techniques. They'll bring, actually, though, their immediate family to make it seem like, hey, we're just out to dinner having a good time. And I think essentially, due to the secrecy that's involved, I think the people that are Michelin inspectors, they grew up watching spy movies. And they wanted to be spies. And they just didn't want to kill. And they didn't want to actually have the risk involved. But they're like, God, I want to sneak around the Russian embassy. But I just want to eat the food around it. And honestly, hey, that makes a lot of sense to me. But there is something in those people that it's like, if they weren't doing this food thing, they might be like wearing a cocktail dress, trying to seduce like a Russian oligarch. We don't know for sure. Now, has there ever been crossover? Whoa. I wonder if the FBI has ever recruited, being like, look, the folks we get from Michelin, They're used to lying. They're used to lying, and they're in nice restaurants where our targets are. Did I just expose the FBI? Am I going to get hunted down? And if I do, is it going to be at a restaurant by one of these people? These Michelin, CIA, FBI plans? That I cannot say for sure. But that's what the inspectors are. They're people with 10 years experience who eat 300 meals a year, who go through 6 months of training, 2 years of shadowing. And they also have another component. The last component of the inspectors is 3 of them have to get together to give or decrease a star. The way the star system works is you can only go up and down once every year. So if you don't have a star, you can get 1 star. You can't go straight to 3 stars. And vice versa. If you're 3, you can only go down to 2. But 3 people have to come together if that's going to happen, and they have to have a consensus. That's where we were talking about the quality between visits, because they'll come again and again. I mean, they probably won't go an infinite amount of times. Probably at some point they get fed up with it. But they will come back with 3 people. They all need to agree, hey, this was a killer meal. So who are they visiting? Who are these chefs, these restaurateurs that are willing to lay it all on the line? I would like to get into some of the stories of some of the most fantastical people that have been in this world of chasing the top tier. You got to understand, to get 1 star, it's incredibly hard work. A lot of the folks we're going to talk about today aren't even just the people that got the 1 stars. Because the more interesting stories are the folks that strive for the 3 stars. And to get the 3 stars, you got to abandon a lot of the rest of your life and just laser in. There are so few restaurants with 3 stars because it's so difficult to get, because the level of labor, creativity, and consistency with a medium that does not include numbers. Sure, you're taking the temperatures of things, but these are live fires. These are live animals that are coming in. These are sources that change year to year. There are an insane amount of factors that are variable, and individuals on a large team have to all execute at an insanely high level to get a 3 stars. And if you're running the ship there, you're not doing much else. You're working 18-hour days. These are people who, if they were in a different industry, they would be the Fortune 500 CEOs. They would be getting shot at, most likely, at this point in our current history. But they would be the lawyers that are working 18 hours days and making zillions of dollars and not having a good relationship with their family, frankly. Let's take a look at one of these individuals. We're starting with the GOAT, the Michelin GOAT right here. Look at this fella. This is Joel Robuchon. I'm most likely mispronouncing that. And he is the Michelin GOAT. And there's a lot of reasons why he's the Michelin GOAT. The speed at which he rose from having his first restaurant, the amount of restaurants he opened that achieved Michelin stars. I have to say, though, and I do have to say this, I do have to point this out. And this is with all due respect to Joel, to the Robuchon family, to the incredible people that work at his kitchens. I will say, upon seeing this picture, it did remind me of the villain from the animated movie about World War II birds, Valiant. And and I'm sorry to say it, but I can't tell these guys apart. And that might be a problem with me, frankly. And I am sorry if this causes any offense, but you can't give me a straight look in the face and say these may not be the same people. Have we ever seen them in the same room? Where was this movie set, you ask? France during World War II. You know what? For those unfamiliar with Von Taliant and the Valiant film I watched as a child, let's pull up the synopsis here. Because I haven't watched this movie in a long time, and I do need to know. I do remember the birds, and I remember them fighting, and I remember it being very serious. But I don't remember much else. But I remember their faces, and I remember that this guy, they look awfully similar. So let's read this. 32% on Rotten Tomatoes, not off to a strong start. As the Allies prepare for the D-Day invasion, hello, a pigeon named Valiant, played by Ewan McGregor, oh my, adorable, wants to contribute to the war effort. Oh, that is beautiful, Ewan. Ewan. With carrier pigeons being decimated by by German Falcon von Talon, played by Tim Curry. I need to make a second apology this time, because I did remember this character, and I did compare him to one of the greatest chefs of all time. I did forget he was a Nazi in this film, played by Tim Curry. The understaffed Royal Homing Pigeon Corps accepts pint-sized Valiant and his shady friend Bugsy, played by Ricky Gervais. This is a great cast. This is an early you can tell this was. No, we don't want the USA. You can tell this was a childhood movie for me. 2005. Yeah, that's perfect. After surviving training, Valiant is sent on a dangerous assignment to rescue Mercury, played by John Cleese, a messenger bird taken prisoner by the Nazis. And I am really sorry about this to everyone at the Robichon family. I am sorry for comparing him to Valiant. We're not even gonna say what he was. So Joel, what made him so incredible? What makes him the GOAT, not the pigeon, not the Warhawk in Normandy? He opened his first restaurant in Paris in 1981. He had other experience. He had been cooking, had won some other awards, but he hadn't run a restaurant. In 1981, he opens Hamin? Oh God, that is gotta be wrong. In Paris. Jamin, all right, folks. In 1981. First year, debut year of his first restaurant, he earns a Michelin star. Next year, 2 stars. The following year, 3 stars. An incredible run. That is so difficult to do. Most of the time that happens, it's like 3 to 8 years between these stars, because the level of focus you have to get to go from there, not to mention the fact that this is his first restaurant. Both of those factors are insane. You'll hear incredible chefs chase 3 stars for years. Gordon Ramsay chasing it for years. And this guy, 1, 2, 3, debut restaurant, first ever restaurant he ran. That's insane. Not only that, but over the course of his career, he wound up opening tons of other restaurants. Let's look at Hamin, by the way. That's got to be wrong. Hamin? See, I want to pronounce it like it's a Spanish word, but it's French. Let's look at this. Okay. We need the Paris version here, though. I don't know what this is. Paris. We're going to have to zoom out, by the way. Look at my little under the desk keyboard here. Okay, so we're not finding it. Cafe, this can't be the same place. Robichon. Okay, here we go. Robichon Hamin. JB Robichon. I think it might just be called About Us. I can't figure it out. There he is. He opens that restaurant. It gets 3 stars. But at his peak in 2016, he accumulated the most Michelin stars any chef has ever accumulated across restaurants. 32. Guys. That's an insane number. It's the most ever happened. There's restaurant groups. The most stars out of any group is the Four Seasons with 45. They have like dozens of chefs. They have each chef is like the one responsible for this stuff. And he was really the one heading up all of these various restaurants, going into them and making sure it was all happening. So to be the individual that acquired 32 stars, an insane run from that beautiful man. Now, what about the youngest ever? So he had the most prolific run. He's sort of the LeBron James in terms of longevity. But who was the Derrick Rose? Who was the guy who just did it younger than anyone else? For a while, it was Marco Pierre White, which is Gordon Ramsay's legendary teacher. I don't know if you've ever seen that clip of Gordon and in his kitchen they're not happy. No one is happy in that kitchen. And I'm sure things have changed to some degree in terms of these high-end kitchens, but geez, was it a rough place to be for a long time. And I'm sure for many it still is. So for a couple years, he had the record. But in 2002, another guy came along, Massimo Alamo. Let's call him. Look, it's not going to be great with the pronunciations of the European names, guys. Let's just accept that. And he got 3 stars at 28 years old at Les Calandres, which let's take a look at that, by the way. Now this I know I have pre-pulled up here. Ooh, I see. I like to look at the Google Maps pictures because then I like to be able to say that people actually took these photos. Okay, scary. I'm scared. I'm sorry, but I'm scared. That's a scary photo. Let's take a look at this. Ooh. Oh, yeah. Look at the plating. Look at the sage leaves over each tortellini. Oh, my God. Look at that. Oh, my God. The mozzarella. Oh. What we're looking at, folks, here is food. This is a glossy risotto. Perhaps the shiniest risotto I've ever seen. Look at the plate. Matches it. Oh, this is one of their signature dishes. I thought this was a bagel. I'll be honest with you. I thought this was a colorful bagel. It's not. Oh, this is another classic high-end Michelin restaurant move. They have some sort of orbiting situation. They love an orbit. In this case, it is a bunch of ingredients stuck into a ball, and at the end of each one of these rods that is stuck into the center ball, there are ingredients on the end, kind of like a planetarium. Which this, I mean, objectively, this is hilarious because you did make one of these when you were in 2nd grade. I mean, that is identical to the planetariums we made as children, but it's cool because you get to eat it. And I'm sure the ambiance of the restaurant, the way they serve it, I'm sure you're not thinking you could do that. I love a stone dishware, just a heavy set granite chunk. And there it is again. What we're looking at, folks, is just a fat mozzarella ball. Whoa, I mean, the shine on this thing, and it's just enormous. I'm sure there's a video of someone cracking into this thing. God, that is beautiful. So at 28 years old, he was the youngest chef to ever receive 3 stars at that restaurant. In 92, they had 1 star, and his mother was running the kitchen. He grew up around this restaurant, which is kind of a beautiful story. He did go away. He did some other things. He played, I believe, professional basketball, either that or volleyball. I think it was basketball, though, in Europe for like a year before coming back to the restaurant, which is, by the way, it's one of those people where it's like, you got to have it all, man. It's like, if I meet a successful person and they have got a great personality, I'm like, great, cool. If they're also hot, it's like, all right, come on, dude. Enough. Let us have something. You're going to play basketball and you're going to be the youngest 3 stars ever? Come on, Massimo. Give us a chance here. They had 92. They had 1 star when his mom ran the kitchen. And he became the head chef at 20 years old. At 23, he got 2 stars, which was a few years later. 3 stars at 28. That's a fast track right there. Just to put the GOAT back in perspective, Joel, we may or may not have compared to a animated film 2000s era villain. Maybe we did that. Maybe we didn't. Watch the episode. So that's a normal course. And he did it at 28, which is incredible. And he has retained 3 stars since then, which is an incredible run too. That's like 22 years of 3 stars. It's hard to maintain them because they come in every year and they're expecting the same level of excellence. And you think that would be easy to maintain, but it's just an endurance factor in terms of you can't be at the restaurant the whole time. You can't do that for 22 years. Most of these folks go on to open other restaurants, so they're now splitting their time. So it really becomes a thing of like, where can we find incredible other chefs who can be there when we're not there? It's really about team building and consistency, which is not something I'm always great at, so I'm impressed. 22 years seems like a long time. That's not the longest 3-star hold we've ever seen. That would be at, and I'm gonna mispronounce it, Léon Bourgeois des Pointes des Colons. Let's take a look at this place right here. I mean, this also. So the chef who ran this is Paul Bocuse. I'm gonna give up. And now it's just called that. And they had 3 stars starting in 1965, and they did that until 2020. 55 years of 3-star quality consistency. I mean, just lasered in for an entire person's lifetime, essentially. And this restaurant, by the way, kind of looks like a Pixar movie restaurant. You got to admit, this is kind of giving Ratatouille and Encanto had a bebe. A beautiful singing rat bebe. Ooh, look at that souffle. The puff on that. And this is just classic. I mean, look at the height on that hat. Ooh. Oh, man. They're drizzling. They're swizzling. They've got... Oh, look at the cheat. What we're looking at, folks, is a cheese cart. And these are tall, wide, stinky cheeses we're looking at here. I mean, these are as tall as the chef's had. Dude, oh my God. I want to just go ham on that thing. God, that looks beautiful. Oh, look at the saucing, the plating. So they held that 3-star distinction for 55 years, the longest run ever. And it was demoted to 2 stars 2 years after Paul Bocose's death. God bless him. I will say, and I have to say this. It's not the most disrespectful thing I'm going to say, because I already made the Valiant comparison. The 2 years after his death, that is kind of funny to do it 2 years after, because you know they went back 1 year and they were like looking around, because it's got to be the 3 inspectors if they're going to demote, and they were looking around like, God bless him, it was last year, we can't do that. And there was one very French, very Michelin guy who was like, we must hold the standards. I want to do the accent. I'm dying to do the accent. We must do the standards. It's not a great accent. We must do the standards. We are the Michelin guide. They can't talk like they. I'm drawing more from Ratatouille than my experience with the French culture. I know it's not that intense, but you know he was being really intense about it. And the other 2 people are, dude, come on, man. Can we just give it another year, dude? His family's right there, dude. We went to his funeral, dude. It was 8 months ago. Can we just come? We have to hold to the standards. So then 2 years. Then they gave it another year, though. They eventually won out because he got tired. He eventually got exhausted of going back because they had to come to consensus. So it was 2 years, and all right, fine, give it 2 stars. God bless him for that. I will say one of so all of these people, they're intense people. They've all done incredible things. We've got the longevity goat. We've got the youngest to ever do it. Well, I guess he wasn't the longevity goat. Now that I said that, I guess the longevity goat was Paul Bocuse. So just kidding. So MJ is Joel, Derek Rose is Massimo, and LeBron is Paul Bocuse. I mean, LeBron's got the 20 years. He's got the most points ever. That makes sense. That makes sense, guys. For those who don't watch basketball, I'm sorry. But those analogies were spot on. But the funniest thing about these chefs is they really do give it their all. And they really abandon their families. Truly. I mean, if you've ever watched Chef's Table, almost every episode has a somber moment about 8/10 the way through where it cuts to the family and it's like, womp womp. They're not happy about it. There's one of a French chef, and they had this childhood restaurant, and he just sold it one day because he wanted to move on to something else. And he didn't tell his kids, who thought they were like going to get married there. And then it cuts to him, and he's like very distraught. And he's like hand in his hand. He's like, I think it was, you could say, selfish. And they all have clips like that in every episode of a show about these intense chefs. It's always like, we don't see Dad a lot, but he is a very accomplished man. And it's like, damn. How are these people getting around? How they've got all these guides. They're going to these restaurants. They're giving them 3 stars. They've got to have 3 people there to demote or upvote. How are they funded? A couple of ways. The most controversial, it's not really that controversial, but the most interesting to me is that a lot of tourism boards of places will fund them. Michelin Guide to bring them there. Florida gave them $1.5 million to come to Florida. The thinking is, hey, the tourism guide is set up to bring people to our restaurants, to promote our restaurants. If we have the Michelin Guide there, people will come from out of state. People within the state maybe will do more going between cities. So they pay them. They say, come on over. Come on over. Come to Florida. Texas just did this. Houston pledged $270,000 over 3 years. And if we extrapolate to the other 3 cities that the Michelin Guide went to in Texas, it's about $1 million. Of our tax dollars, technically, we fund the tourism boards, went to Michelin. But again, if we're going to have a tourism board, which no one's up in arms about that, I haven't seen anyone complaining about that, or this topic in general, and their thing is to promote it, it's hard to say that the ROI is not there. We haven't run the calculations, but people do care about the Michelin Guide, and they do, it does definitely generate excitement. There's a zillion press releases after the show happens. And there are people who will come from out of state and within the state and travel to those places to try some of this really incredible food. They do sell some prints still in places like Japan. Not many countries have prints. The Texas Guide, we can look at that really quickly. It appears to be free. I'm on the website right here. I did also test this without an ad blocker. Was not a problem. Maybe they've got some data on you. Maybe they are selling that and making some money off of it, but it's not obvious to me. They also have some branded events with hospitality brands like TripAdvisor, where they'll say, hey, we're going to give you some access, or we're going to actually set up and organize some of our folks there. But they're mostly funded by the Michelin Tire Company. The thinking is, as it was originally, more people traveling, more tires sold. It doesn't hold up as well anymore. But there was a couple studies, maybe 3% in a new country, Michelin's tires increases. But the general idea is that it adds to the Michelin brand. It makes people think of the Michelin brand. It makes people associate it with high quality, which is what Michelin wants to do. And they estimate to lose $15 to $24 million annually on this, quote unquote, lose, right? Because it helps their brand in the long run. But on the other hand, they are not directly making money off the guide. And that's the story of the Michelin Guide. That's how they went from 2 brothers in 1900 trying to sell a couple more tires in France to a global organization that goes around to these chefs in these restaurants in 45 destinations across the world, judging them, deciding who's what, ranking them. Are they 1 star? Are they recommended? Are they the top of the top? And people dedicate their lives to their approval. And whether you think they have the best taste, whether you value the guide or not, you do have to give them credit for the breadth and the intensity of work that they generate by going out there, putting in the legwork, sending people around to all different places and saying, hey, this is what's good, and letting the people know about it. Thank you for listening to the first episode of The David Douglas Show. The next episode will be in 2 weeks, and we'll continue that cadence every 2 weeks, another deep dive into a different food topic in the least serious way I can manage, until I feel comfortable doing 1 a week. Thank you all for listening. I appreciate you being here. Until next time.